Hello everybody and welcome to a new edition of Sausage Making. Today we're going to try making an app from scratch. This is a lie because nothing is really from scratch in technology, but I'm going to go over the steps that I go through to make a new application. So every time I make a new app, I basically do the same thing over and over again, and I think it's useful to go over what those things are. We're not going to go over many specific things related to this application. That's all going to happen after I make this video. This is essentially the construction of scaffolding, the common parts that I use in every app. You might get an idea of where things are, how certain things work, the different pieces that come together, how we have an app and the website in the same project folder, this kind of thing. I hope this will be informative. It'll probably be long, so check the description below for timestamps and other information if you want to skip ahead. I'm basically going to improvise this, so it's really going to be live. I'm going to try to organize things along the way, so it's not going to be super structured, but hopefully after the fact there will be some logic in the order of affairs. So what are we actually going to do? Again, nothing is from scratch in technology. We're always reusing things that other people have made. In this case, I'm going to take an app that I've already made as a model and take things out, add new things, so that it's more relevant to the structure of this new app. The app that I'm going to make is called Schemalog. This is going to be an app for creating documents, setting a custom schema on each one, search and filter and sort, synchronize with your zero data backend like remote storage or fission, stuff in all of my other apps, but it's not actually for a specific kind of thing. Like, it's not about notes, JavaScript, recipes, YouTube videos, personal tracking, or flashcards or whatever. It's abstract. You can just throw some JSON at the app and then use the search, filter, sort mechanism that I have in various apps. For example, in Emojilog, here's the books that I'm tracking. You have a list of items, and you click on it and you have some detail and edit stuff. You can filter, search, this kind of thing. So I want to use this interface, but not for a specific kind of document. I want the person using the app to define what kind of document it's going to be. But also, we're not just going to have one kind of document, you're going to have like multiple kinds of things. So really, it's about collections, which is why we're using Emojilog as an example, because Emojilog is a bunch of collections, and in each collection you have a bunch of documents. Actually, a specific feature of Emojilog that's relevant to this is that you can define custom fields. So that's the closest app that I have that resembles what Schemalog should be. So although I'm not going to implement many Schemalog specific features, this is a really close model. We're going to just take this and create a scaffolding so that later on I can actually do Schemalog. So again, why are we using Emojilog? Because it already has most of the parts in place, so I don't have to start from zero. I can take this collection of collections, if you will, and inside each of those collections there's a bunch of documents. I can take that structure and just repurpose it for something else. Here's the project folder for Emojilog. This is the root folder, and inside the app folder you can see the specific subfolders for the app and the front page and the guide and everything. Roughly, I'm just going to go like one folder at a time and try and do things in order of maybe dependencies so that I don't do things that rely on other things, that kind of thing. But again, I'm going to improvise, so hopefully it's interesting to you. Try and enjoy the ride. Let's see how this goes. I'm probably not going to be able to explain like every little thing about everything that I'm doing. This is more like I'm going to do what I usually do and try and talk through what I'm thinking, give some idea of what's going on. But I'm probably just going to go like really fast and just try and move folders over and verbalize more or less what's happening without going into too much detail. So let's start. Here I am in the root folder of Emojilog. I'm going to just start by moving over this stuff that's in the root folder. Why don't we start by setting up the Git repository? I've already created a folder for Schemalog and it's empty. I'm going to take that folder and I'm going to open it in the terminal, and then I'm going to say git init, and now I have a Git repository there, which I can open up in the GitHub app, which is how I usually deal with Git, because I don't really like command line. Does it work? It works. Let's put in the git ignore so that we don't accidentally commit other files. So this is going to ignore the node modules directory, anything that we build, the environment variables, which should just be private. It's not something we want to commit into a repository. etc. That's now going to be ignored. Let's do those environment variables. Usually what you want to start with is this sample file. The environment variable sample file has environment variables that are used all throughout the project. It could be used in the JavaScript app, it could be used in the website, various places, and we define these things here so that we don't have to edit code in order to update something like the link to the public URL for the Git repository, or if the web-ring URL changes, I shouldn't have to go into the code to do that. I can just update the environment variable, this kind of thing. I've done this one already. These environment variable files, I'm just going to dump them in this directory. So here again, we've copied over, just copy paste the same variables from the emoji log project. So you're going to see a lot of this EML, that's the prefix I use for emoji log. And I'm not going to change that stuff now. You can see I've changed the touch icon to be schema log and the repo URL, but I'm not really even going to change too much stuff. I'm literally just going to copy structures over. And that's hopefully going to be most of what this video is. Find structures that are useful, copy them into here. At the end, we'll try and make things more specific to this app. So let's say that's basically the environment variable for now. What else should we start copying over? I think the license file is pretty straightforward. It's going to be the exact same thing, probably. Let's do this rollup config. Rollup config is taking those environment variables that we've defined and it's injecting it into the JavaScript environment. This is basically going to be the same thing. We have a README. That might be kind of complicated. Let's see what we can do there. So here we have emoji log and the name of the other project and the website and everything. I'm just going to replace all of that later because there's going to be multiple places where it says emoji log. So I'm not really going to do anything here. I should be committing all of this. Import env sample. I'm making these commits here. I'm committing names of other projects into the repository. I don't really care. I'm going to throw all these commits away. These commits are just to help with the scaffolding. Import rollup config.js, import readme.md. Let's try this package stuff here. The package.json file defines the dependencies that we use for our project, and maybe also some commands to help us get started easily without having to type in longer things. And in terms of the dependencies, most of these are common. So these are dependencies for the front page. These are dependencies for the guide, which are common to all apps, so we don't really need to take that out. This is called track for the main app, which in emoji log is called track, but in this case it's going to be called something else. I'm going to leave the name as it is. We don't need an emoji picker for this app at all, so that I can take out. The sundial visual representation also, we don't need that. Progress ring also, we don't need that. Moment is sort of time related stuff, which I think also we can just get rid of because this app is not really about time and dates and everything. We can also just put it back later if we need it. Chain, I don't know what that is, so I'm going to leave it. Everything else is common to all apps, so I'm just going to leave it as it is. Post install file, this is copying dependencies into public folders so that it's accessible in a public folder. I think most of this is fine to leave as it is. I know all of these things. Somebody new to this probably might not know. This is a problem that should be solved with time, but it's one of the reasons why I'm making this video. The only other thing in here is the Mocha start. What do we have in here? Ooh, this has a lot of dependencies. Let's skip this and we'll leave it until later. Let's commit, import package files. This is just generated stuff, so we don't think about that. We already did the environment variables, the Git repository is done, the static file is for deploying, so we don't really need to think about that. License, readme, rollup, package, all done. Mocha start we're going to skip. Node modules, I think we can actually do an install now. npm run setup. That'll do like an install and other stuff. Let's start with our app folder, which is the meat. I'm not just going to copy the whole app folder. I'm going to do this one thing at a time. Why is it called os-app? I was really inspired by WordPress when I started doing my own personal web framework, and they have these WP- folders. They sign folders so you know that this is a WordPress folder. I used to do that like 5 years ago, and I'm still using that same framework now. Old School is the name of my framework, so the folder starts with os-. You notice I really like prefixes. So we have a shared folder with some stuff that's common to various parts of the app, and then we have these different parts of the app. Maybe we'll start with the shared folder. So the first one is __external. Everything with a double underscore is like generated, so we don't really need to commit or touch those. We have a common folder, which might be useful. I think we can just copy that folder over. It should go in shared, which was just generated by our install process. And what do we have in common controller? So this common controller exposes that underscore underscore external folder to the public. It's this long thing, controller shared static asset folders, blah, blah, blah. But essentially it makes that folder visible publicly. We have some UI style here. There's a common style where we're declaring the background and foreground colors for use in our shared themes. I have actually done that. I'll leave it until later. Because now we're just going to copy structures. We're not going to edit stuff. Import common controller and import common style. And that's it. That's the common folder. We have this journal object. A little bit about emoji log and the types that are used in there. Emoji log is a way to manage a set of journals, which you can think of as collections. A journal has many memos. Let's start by moving this one over. We have some tests here. Let's see if we can run our tests. We don't have journal objects valid because we didn't use the Mocha start, so I can't run this test. I think we can just comment that out. Now we can actually run these tests for the journal object, and those 57 tests are passing. That can be useful while we're scaffolding. I'm going to sort of go in the opposite direction. Usually you write tests, fail the tests, and then you pass the tests by writing the code. And so here I'm going to modify the code to fail the tests, and then I'm going to remove the tests. It's a way of seeing what I'm doing. I don't know if this is the best way to do things, but this is how I do things. This function, errors, is sort of a validation function. You have an ID. It's validating that the journal has a name and creation date. And these are things that are going to be useful in schema log as well. We're going to have a collection, and that collection is going to have many sub-documents. Which of these properties here are going to be useful in the schema log collections? I don't know if it's going to be called journal, but let's imagine that it's going to be called journal. It's probably going to have a name. We're going to have a collection for our name, creation date, and modification date. The touch date is something specific to emoji log. I don't really need to have that. If I take that out, there's going to be some test that fails. Let's take that out. We have these journal fields. I'm going to do it another way, but for the time being, I'll just leave this as it is. There's a child count, which we use for funding. So we keep track of the count in the parent document to avoid doing a lot of extra calculations. So that's basically fine. We have this field object, the parent of that other thing. I'm going to leave it as it is for now. And this is generating field object. This can be left as it is. The directory is going to be EML underscore journals. Probably leave that as it is, change it later. The folder path for the journal, each journal is going to have a folder in our zero data protocol file system. That makes sense. We're going to stub it out. Okay, fine. We have these CRUD methods, which integrate with the zero data wrap. When we create our parent object, we set an ID, creation date, modification date. When we update, we just set the modification date. List means go into each of those journal folders and get the main file, and then get the object and parse it, and blah, 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 and return an array. When you delete a journal, recursively delete everything that's in the folder. This can be left as it is. So again, this is basically the emoji log object schema, and it still says EML, and there's still some specific stuff related to there, but we're just going to leave it as it is and keep the structure so that we can have this scaffolding to create schema log. Import Mocha start. By the way, Mocha start is this thing that runs before you do any unit test or interface test. It will run this, and it gives us some stub mock objects to work with. It also deletes the entire testing file system. It just makes sure we're always doing things on a blank slate. Port EML journal. Again, most of these commits are garbage. We're just going to throw out the git history later. So that's the parent object, EML journal. Now we're going to go to the next object, which is the memo. This is the child object. So tests are not running because we had commented out the dependency here in Mocha start. So now I'm going to include the dependency, and now the tests pass. Again, we're going to go in the opposite order. We're going to change the code, fail the test, remove the test. Each memo has an ID. This is actually a really tricky thing because the idea of schema log is to like import your own JSON. But if it's your own JSON, you probably have your own ID field. It's probably called ID or something else. It may or may not be a string, I don't know. So this is something that really should be looked at and modified, but I'm just going to leave the structure as it is for now, and I'm going to think of those schema log specific things later. We're going to connect it to the journal ID. Also, this is debatable. For now, I'm going to leave it just so that we have like a working app that we can use, and then we can chisel away the unnecessary stuff later. The event date is something hyper-specific to emoji log, so I'm going to get rid of that. That results in this test here. Okay, we have this idea about notes. I don't know if we need to force a notes field on everybody, but maybe we will. It might help just in testing, so I'm going to leave that there. Custom data goes along with custom fields, so you define your custom fields in the parent object, and then you set the values for those fields in the child object. Maybe that's worth keeping. Here's the name of the directory. Here's the folder path. So in emoji log, the child objects are organized on the file system by the day that they were created, and then each child object has a folder, and inside that folder there's sort of a main object. Why is it like a folder and then a file instead of just a file? Because in emoji log I thought you may want to have other types of media to go along with those objects. You may have like a picture, a location, or an audio. Maybe in this case it might be simpler to just have an object, but I think I'm not going to now. Let's leave it as it is. Here's a stub. So we create this fake object based on the path for syncing reasons. I'm going to leave everything as it is. When we create a memo, we set an ID, we set the journal ID, we set a creation date, we set a modification date. When we update, we set the modification date. When we list, we go inside and recursively fetch everything. When we delete the memo, we recursively delete the folder for the child object. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be changed there, but I'm going to leave that structure for now. Import EML memo. Done. Next folder, root link. This is not an object or a type. This is actually a view. Yeah. For example, on the guide, we have this thing at the bottom, which is a root link. So it's a link that you click on it and it goes to the home page, but it also has the icon for the app and it's centered. It has some styling associated with it. So it's a way of encapsulating this style. This module has defined everything, and this one is just wrapping that and setting it to something that's specific to emoji log. I'm going to leave this as it is. I'm not even going to show it to you. Import email root link. Next, setting, an important type. So in addition to the parent object and the child object, we also have the setting object uncommented from Mocha Start, so our tests can run and pass. And here we're just defining an object that has a key and a value, and I'm doing this in a way that's prefixed with the specific app because I prefer to do things that way. You could also have a general object, and just instead of EML settings, you could just say settings, but this is how I like to do things, and this is fine as it is. So import EML settings. Done. Transport is what we use for import and export. It's some logic around creating objects and stringifying, serializing objects so that they can be exported. It's also, I think it'll work exactly the same way. So you have this journal and we export the settings, and the child objects are imported and exported inside of the journal objects. We have this memos dynamic field thing. This is probably fine as it is. The tests and everything, we'll modify all this later. Import EML transport. Done. That's basically the shared folder. Now let's go into the main folders for the app. And I'm going to start on the bottom here because I know these ones are simpler. So we're going to start with Tech Service Worker so that the app can function offline. We have this version ID which is generated here. It's just a date. And we're basically using this template that's coming from OLSK Service Worker. So there's not much we're doing here. We're generating a view based on these variables that are specific to our app. Import Tech Service Worker. Let's go to robots. Tech-robots defines a robots.txt file based on the routes. What we do is actually exclude everything and then allow the front page, the vitrine, and the guide. We don't allow the app page because there's nothing really for search engines to do there. It's just a JavaScript app. So just index the front page and the guide, as well as the different localizations of each. The vitrine is available in different language codes. The guide should be, but it's not, but it might be eventually. So index each language code for each of those pages. That's basically fine as it is. let's start with some of these submodules. These submodules are used in the main app, which in Emojilog is called track. For example, our tracker for how many books did I read is here. We can edit that by clicking this button. It shows this form, which allows us to set the emoji, define custom fields, or delete the whole parent object. We're going to use this form, which is called template, and we can probably take out this emoji thing. Let's see. Oh wow, it's got submodules too. That's interesting. It's got this param form, which is when we click this button, it'll show a form to define custom fields. That logic is probably going to be different, but I'm going to leave it exactly as it is. I'm not even going to touch anything in this submodule. Just going to leave it as it is. Khalas. Let's start with the access test. So name field, which is here, it's our emoji. And we have a create param button, edit param, discard, that's it. We're also showing an OLSK emoji picker. We're not running the test for this yet. We have this emoji picker here, which has some action. We don't need this action. The emoji picker, that also means we don't need the emoji picker here. Where else are we using this? Oh god, okay. We don't need to import this. We don't need to show this. We don't need to configure what happens when you do one or more, blah, blah, blah. So those things can all be taken out. And I think that's it. So it's sort of like this, but without the emoji picker, and everything else stays the same. Let's commit that. Import sub template. Done. We'll just run the tests later. Journals is this collection of collections. So here you can see all of our different collections, and we can click on them to open up the documents for each collection. Let's copy that one over. Selection with Sublime. There's a submodule here as well. There's a timer. We're not going to have a concept of a timer, so I think I'm just going to throw that out. I'm going to go to our access test. So we have this module, and there's going to be a head or a toolbar, which basically just has this plus button, create button image, and we have our list item, which is each of those things. So show this element and the head and the create button and the blah blah blah, collection, list item, show the timer. This thing needs to be purged. I don't need this. Ooh, this is supposed to be something else here, to do. It's maybe the first time in my life that I've written to do. We don't have this timer thing. Ooh, man. Yeah, the chunk function, we're not going to have a chunk function, so this can be out. I don't have a chunk function. This band dividing the collections, we're just going to not do that. We're just going to show all the items. We don't need this chunk function, and we don't have this chunk function. And then we have this app-specific chunk function, which we don't do. And here's the definition, throw it out. We had the timer thing also that we were getting rid of, yeah. So we don't need that. We don't need moment either. There is no notion of chunk, so don't have this. We don't have a notion of touch date. Words are not being said to describe this. Oh my god. This is purely mind work right now. Oh my god. We don't have a timer. It does not sort by touch date. We have moment in here. We don't have a moment. Track timer. We can say that that should work. Anyway, so our logic tests are passing. We're not actually doing our unit tests. Are there any submodules? There are no submodules. That's an empty folder. Okay, so this journal's parent object collection folder module is basically done. We don't have these things anymore. So this is just me going through my head here. I'm not really explaining, but we're deleting stuff that's not used. That's not used, and these are not used either. So basically, I just deleted all the localizations that are not the create button. And also this list item, if it doesn't have a name, we have a localized version of untitled. So we keep that, but everything else is out. This will become more clear once we actually run the unit tests, and we're almost there. I'm going to commit this. Import journals. Deep. Wow. Okay, last submodule, browse, and this one also has submodules. And I think we're going to keep everything, which is insane. 3 modules, we're just going to throw it in. Which is good and bad, because it's good because we know that pattern basically works. We don't have to like redo everything. We just gotta change the prefix essentially, because most of it is fine. I'm gonna go through each submodule here. So this is the info module, which has toolbar, back button, discard button, form, custom field, notes. The date button we can get rid of. So I'm gonna get rid of everything that refers to this date thing. In 4 languages, we don't have this notion of date. Oh, yeah. And that has this thing here, which is now, oh man, yeah. So the logic around showing the date field, inputting the date field, submitting the date field is also no longer relevant. Nobody's using that. So basically there's nothing really here with the date field. So that's out. Continuing on, we don't have these elements here. Oops, we don't have these elements here with the date. We don't have this context, this thing here. This is all gone. Next, localize. There's no date button to localize. There's no date save button to localize, so that's out. There is no date field or date button or field to test whether we autofocus or whether it binds to the correct thing or whatever. This is out. And I noticed that there was an event date field, which is also no longer existing. There's no more date field, and any reference to this event date is also not real. We took out the child object event date. We just use create and update. We don't do this. So we're not going to pass this. Ooh, and I don't know what that's going to do. We need a value here. Let's assume it's going to be the creation date for now. More logic tests. It sorts by event date. Let's use modification date. We're going to use modification date. As an accessibility summary, in emoji log, we would read the event date as an accessibility summary, and we would also sort it by event date. But now we're going to sort it by modification date. And that has implications over here. So modification date is not defined, or because we didn't do that here. Oh. All right. So logic tests are passing again, and we're going to continue looking for references to this event date, which no longer exists. Not in the miscellaneous tests. Here we said use modification date in the view. And here in the rollup start, we are, after we JSON parse, we have to convert the date, any date, to an actual string. So if we're passing this through JSON, we're going to do that. And modification date. I don't know if this is really, yeah. Anyway, this is a bit haphazard. The event date is showing the modification date. The event date is showing the modification date. Jeez, that's terrible. This is really what we want to deal with here. Remove this, and we're going to bind to modification date. So I've removed all of the references to this memo event date or child object event date, because that's something particular to the other application, and that's no longer here in any of these 3 modules. This is the list item module. So in this list we have a date here and we have notes, and we're just showing that. So that's fine. I think all of this is good to commit. Really haphazard, but this is fine. Let's commit this. Done. Now, let's go to Vitrine. Vitrine is the front page, which looks like this in emoji log. So let's open this here. We have a submodule, which is a feature list, and here actually we're just adding one feature here, which is this COM interface. So this feature list is actually a completely generic thing. I reuse the same thing in every app because they mostly have these same features. It's accessible on any device, you don't need Wi-Fi, etc. These are common features. So I don't need to rewrite this in every one, but in emoji log, I have this idea of like a COM interface because when you do self-tracking, there's a lot of apps that have like streaks and stuff. So basically, this specific feature is not applicable to schema log. So I'm just going to throw out this whole submodules folder because we don't have a specific feature list. And this reference to this module is also going to have to be changed in two files. So here in the vitrine, we're saying that it shows the EML feature list and then the generic OLSK app feature list. So we're just going to take this first one out. So again, we're just removing references to this. It's really simple. And that's the submodule. So now there's no submodules. We've simplified this. And what else is in here? EML vitrine, video. Okay, I haven't made the video for this app yet, but I think I will. So we'll leave that. It's got some features. It's got guide button, support. I think everything else is fine because there's nothing really like that app specific here. It's basically the same template I use for most of my apps, and the specific text here will need to be changed, but I'll do that later. And so we're going to leave this as it is. So this app now has vitrine. Import, open vitrine. Now let's do the guide because it's smaller than the actual app folder. This is mostly specific content. Here, if we open the guide live, you can see we don't need sundials. I guess we could get rid of that. This section can be purged. And any reference to sundial, really. Oh. And here we're doing some more stuff related to sundials, blah, 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 blah. Remove that. And then also, I think in the controller, we have all of these. We're not assigning this object. So we're only passing down this track route variable. There's also different ways to do this. Anyway, so that's good. We don't need this. Oh my gosh, track timer, that's what we need to purge. So there's no track timer logic. These can be gone. And that's it. Eventually we will change emoji log to schema log. We will change the prefix. These shortcuts are also mostly good. Let's leave this as it is. Import, open, guide. And last but certainly not least, the actual app, which has no submodules. So we're going to copy that over and open this here. Let's start with access. So here we have our journals, which is our list of parent objects, and list item, which is our element for each parent object. So we're defining this logic of show the parent objects when you click on this thing, show the child object catalog, etc. Basically, all is good here. I think any references to like event, date, we would delete, or track timer. So this needs to be replaced with that to-do thing that we wrote down. Super messy, super messy. This test will probably fail, it probably makes no sense, but it's all good. We're just purging references. Not a great way to do things, but it's my way. I think the rest of this is good. So this is kind of crazy because we have the app and then we're testing some cloud stuff, sign in with storage, what happens when you sync, funding stuff, although this funding stuff is actually being tested in a template and we're just passing variables to our testing template. This is all good. Testing some syncing, testing some import-export recipes and stuff like that. It's really kind of exhausting to do this from scratch, so you don't want to do this. It would be great if we had abstracted all of this to some kind of template app maker or something, but that itself is a job and it takes work to understand the right abstractions. These are good structures to work with, so we're going to use them. Any reference to moment? No. This is pretty bare bones actually. Most of the meat is in other stuff, so this can be committed. Open track. That's basically all the folders in our app. And like I said, I'm not going to do specific features in here, but I'm going to do certain things that are fairly easy, like just changing the prefix and stuff. We have our scaffold, and I'm going to make this as schema-log as possible without actually implementing any schema-log specific folders. One thing is this prefix. I'm going to do this in a case-sensitive way. When we look for EML, there's different ways that we have this prefix. We have EML uppercase, EML lowercase, and then there's an underscore. Sometimes there's no underscore. So I'm going to start with this, EML underscore capitalized, and I'm just going to put SCH as our prefix. What we're going to do now is we're going to just remove EML from everywhere. That's capital with the underscore, and I'm going to go lowercase with the underscore. So that's journals, memos, settings. Replace that. Replace EML underscore and its variants. Now we're going to do EML capitalized. This is kind of a lot, so even for me this is a lot. So I'm not going to just search replace over all this. I'm going to do this maybe one shared module at a time. EML journal will become SCH journal. So we're going to just replace this. I'm not even going to look at it, and I'm going to rename this folder. Rename EML journal. So that's done. And now I'm going to go EML memo to SCH memo. I'm not even going to look at it because that is hyperspecific. Change the file also. Welcome to my world. EML setting becomes SCH setting. Not even going to look at it. I think my brain is starting to fry. This video needs to end soon. EML transport, replace it with SCH, becomes SCH transport, and rename EML transport. Did we uncomment anything? No, okay. EML root link is the last one. It becomes SCH root link, close everything, rename the folder, and commit it. What else? This error could be renamed. What else? EML guide becomes SCH guide. Let's do fields. I can't describe how much I love doing this way. Like, I know this never happens in other programming projects. People don't write code like this, but I love it. I love it. I know it's verbose, but just doing this makes me feel great. It's like I'm doing so much and I don't need to know. Like, I don't need to check. Like, I'm loving it. Email vitrine becomes SCH vitrine. Whoa. Rename email track. I'm trying not to engage my brain in this. I know there's a better way to do this, just like regular expressions or something. Now we have a small amount of stuff and it all looks great. So I'm just going to rename eml.ch, and we're done. I may have missed actually some submodules here. Doesn't matter because I'm going to throw these commits out. So EML here, remove the case sensitive. There's no EML prefix anymore. So this is good. Some other things we can do, emoji log as a slug. This can be schema log. I didn't realize they both end with log. That's interesting. So rename that. So now I'm going to rename emoji log. Okay, maybe we'll turn the case sensitive on, and emoji log here is going to become schema log. Rename emoji log. That's good. And any reference to emoji. This field, this does not exist anymore. This template name field. Oh, actually, the field is there, but it's not called emoji, it's called something else. So it's just pretty easy to rename this. So name, nombre, and nom, and actually there's a better way to do this. Hold on. Wording 18. Do I have name? Okay, I could extract this to maybe some general thing, but it's okay. Nome. That's it. Okay, so rename emoji. Purge unused style. Okay, let's try running this. See what happens. Everything's broken, everything's broken. I forgot about the manifest. So there are some disadvantages to doing things this way. This is one of them. No, I completely just blanked out on this. So now we gotta repeat emoji log again. EML, is that anywhere? Okay. Import tech manifest and launch the whole thing again. Okay, so hopefully that should be enough to launch everything. There. So this is good. Some really weird styles and stuff, but that's it. So it says schema log, and we have some features here, and I think there's a guide, schema log guide, blah blah blah. This should be the icon. I don't know why we have a different icon there. I know why. Let's do this. So app shared root link UI assets, and we can see data schema log identity SVG. Copy that, replace it, and now we have our front page which shows this thing. So that's good. Replace identity. I actually want to just get rid of it, but I'll do that later. And I'm also going to try this here, common style. So now instead of these emoji log colors, we're going to have this. So still other stuff to do, but this is basically the scaffolding for this project. We didn't try the app. The app is blue also, that's cool. So create, I can create a new thing. Let's call it alpha, say done, and then I'm going to create a new item, Bravo, Charlie, Delta. So some style issues, but we have a functional app. This says to do instead of alpha, but this is a good scaffolding for me to create an app where you can create a collection, and inside that collection you import some JSON, and then you can see those items as this type of thing, and then you can search for text within the JSON object and see it. Lots of stuff to fix here, but this is functional, and this is a really great scaffolding. This is what I do in all of my apps. This is how I start. So I take something that exists already and tweak it so that it works for the new project. That's all I'm going to show for today. If you're still here, I applaud you on your patience. I hope it was interesting for you. Let me know what you think, if this was useful, or if there's other things that maybe I could go more in depth into. I would love to make smaller videos about specific topics. Please share this video if you thought it was interesting, and reach out on social media, say hello. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.